So good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the October, can't believe it's October already, October 2nd, Technical Advisory Committee, TPO. So with that, I will ask that we have a call to order for attendees.
Would you like the roll call, sir?
Yes, please.
Jeff Sims.
Here.
Mike Williams.
Here.
Brian McCarthy.
Here.
Jonathan Scott.
Here.
Michael English. Cal Hardy.
Alex Henry here for that.
Thank you. Robert Frey.
Online.
Laura Lenhart.
Here.
Gina Du.
Here.
Bob Campbell.
Present.
I'm sorry, Bob, was that you saying yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesus Peraza Garcia.
Here.
Robert Wassam. Frank Koffenauer.
A remote.
Thank you. I do have a couple people coming in as we're talking. Got it. Okay. Jay Collins.
Present.
Melissa Lanhart. Jennifer Malone. Nicole Sutton.
Present.
Sarah Caper.
Here.
Thank you. We do have an in-person quorum.
Okay, great, thanks. And just a point of order note, as you may recall, we've in former meetings had a motion at this point to allow for non-in-person people to be part of the quorum. Apparently, I don't know all the nuances, but essentially that is no longer going to be an option. So only in-person people will be considered for the quorum. Doesn't mean you can't attend remotely. If you can't make it in person, absolutely, we ask and you can still make comments and weigh in, but you can't have an official vote as part of the quorum going forward. So, okay, with that, we'll move forward with public comment. I don't believe we have any in-person public comment. Is there anybody online?
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay. Very good. So next up is the approval of the minutes from September. Does anybody have any comments besides me? Okay, I wanted to forward a comment on page 5. Let's see, it is I know you all are aware of it, but just for the record, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the 5th paragraph. It's just an oversight. There's a double negative where it says the chair made the recommendation that the committee is not in opposition nor in favor, but did not feel that the committee did not have enough information. And that first not should be deleted because we did feel that we did not have information. So I know I've emailed it forward. My understanding is you already are addressing it for the record, but just wanted to get that out there to make sure it was understood our position on it. I believe that's how we're looking at it. So that's my only noted change. Does anybody else have any other change to make? So with that, can I get a motion for approval with that?
So moved.
Bob Campbell, thank you.
Jay Collins, second.
Thank you, Jay. Any opposition or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain. So next up, this should be a pretty streamlined meeting, I hope. So first up is the action item for the TPO apportionment fund. And I probably did just change it. I have to go.
Thanks. Gail, could you make me the presenter?
We can see your notes slide. There you go.
There we go. Does that look good, Wade?
Perfect.
Excellent. Good afternoon, TAC, Elizabeth Watkins, TPO staff, and I'm here to give you a brief presentation on the 2023 update to the TPO apportionment plan. So what exactly is an apportionment plan? Simply, all it is a document that outlines the voting membership of the MPO board. State and federal statute require MPO designation, and state statute in particular requires that all MPOs review the composition of its membership in conjunction with each decennial census. So we've had the 2020 census numbers for a while, and we've taken that information and drafted a proposed apportionment plan. Some of the requirements outlined in state law are that the TPO board must be between 5 and 25 members, that voting membership must be based on an equitable geographic population ratio, which essentially just means that it needs to be proportional with population. And if there are transportation operators on the board, and we have a few operators on our board as voting members, so if that situation occurs, then the county commissioners must compose no less than 20% of its membership. So for those of you who've been on the TAC for over a year, this may sound familiar to you. Last August, the TPO board proposed to increase the representation from the Hillsborough Board of County Commissioners from their current 5 seats on the board to 7. And then at that time, staff was under the assumption that in order for the apportionment plan to be approved, you had to take it to all of the jurisdictions for approval. So with that understanding in mind, in October, we brought it to the city of Tampa, that draft apportionment plan, increasing the BOCC seats to 7. And the city council kind of countered with their own idea of what that apportionment plan should say. And their proposal was to increase Tampa's membership from 3 to 4 seats. So staff took that information back to the TPO board in December of 2022, and the TPO board considered Tampa's proposal, but essentially did not support it and decided at that time to just table the apportionment plan and bring it up later on. Then the next major milestone was in June of this year when FDOT officially issued their apportionment guidance right after the legislative session. And in that guidance, they also laid out the firm deadline for apportionment plans, which is November 15th. So what has changed since the last time we brought up the apportionment plan? Well, a big thing was having that formal guidance from DOT. And I mentioned earlier that we were under the impression that you had to take the apportionment plan to all of the jurisdictions, as in previous cycles, but that interpretation has changed. So in this guidance, DOT lays out 3 essentially categories of apportionment plans. The first of which is minor or no changes. So maybe adding a seat or 2 or not changing your composition at all. All you need to do is the board needs to adopt an apportionment plan. But there are 2 new categories. One is if there are substantial changes that don't require MPO designation. So let's say, for example, the area west of my mom, the area east of Waimama became urbanized, and there was a new section within our urbanized area to incorporate. At that point, we would need to go through a redesignation action, updated interlocal agreement, and a variety of other requirements. The third category is that substantial changes for redesignation. So a very clear one of that is if 3 MPOs, if Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough decided to merge, we would fall under this category, need to update all of our agreements, and go through much more processes. So that guidance was issued, and another thing that has changed is that conversation about the MPOs in the Tampa-St. Pete urbanized area merging. That was not front of mind when we were initially bringing the apportionment plan through. So this is, a complex matter with its own apportionment conversations that will need to be had in the next few years. So this is the current apportionment of the TPO board. There are 5 members for BOCC, 3 for the city of Tampa, and the remaining entities have 1 vote. And based on the information that has changed, the MPO merger, this new information from DOT, staff is proposing that the existing membership stay the same and be documented through the 2023 MPO apportionment plan. So that is the action before you today. Essentially what the apportionment plan says is let's maintain our existing voting structure. And yeah, so I'd be happy to take any questions on the draft apportionment plan or any of your comments.
All right, great, Elizabeth. Thank you for that summary. Before we have a discussion, so this, did you say this comes up, I mean, how frequently is it evaluated, like, or is it required to be evaluated on to make it move forward?
It's required essentially every 10 years. MPOs have the ability to do it more frequently if they so desire, but state statute requires in conjunction with the decennial census.
So that's the only required time, okay. All right, do we have any comments at this point? Yes, Sarah.
Thanks. I appreciate you bringing this to us, Elizabeth, and to the TPO staff. I have some concerns about voting on it personally, because I don't know, as kind of a technical advisor, I don't know what the BOCC would want to do. And so similar to what happened at the last meeting, I will be abstaining from this because I don't think I can provide guidance on it appropriately.
One thing that I did find out since the last meeting, people being here can count towards quorum even if they are abstaining. So we can still hold a vote even if the number of voting people falls below the quorum.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. I mean, point noted, I don't think this one is quite as controversial as the last one, but I mean, your point was taken. I do think that we can get perspective, you know, having been on the board and seeing, you know, what agencies are significant to be members. So I feel like we've got more of an ability to comment compared to that last issue last month, but I certainly can understand what you're concerned.
So I have to agree with Sarah. In fact, just from what was up on the screen, our board members recommended a different plan with more BOCC members on the TPO board. And that's not moving forward, and you know, that is what it is, but puts us in a very difficult position, supporting something that our board clearly doesn't want. So, Sarah, I'm gonna have to abstain as well. And I understand the core issue, I'm not here to argue that, but
Good, thanks, Frank. Anyone else? Yes, Bob.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, same comment. Anyone, any other comments? I mean, me personally, I feel like, I think because we're not voting to change it, I'm a little more comfortable voting for it because I believe we've had a good system as far as I can tell going. I'm not really familiar with why the increase in commissioners and then TPA was proposed previously, but since it's staying status quo, I'm a little more comfortable supporting it. So I will vote. It's just my opinion as one member.
well,
Actually, I will vote. So.
I'm guessing it's because of the significant increase in unincorporated population, and just proportionally, presuming that that's the reason.
Well, Elizabeth, do you have any background on why initially the 2 extra commissioners were proposed to be added?
Yes, it was, I don't know who was speaking in the room, but they were spot on. The rationale for adding 2 seats was due to the proportional population. As you can see in this table, unincorporated Hillsborough County has 31% of the votes, although it's 69% of the population. So at that time, at that BOCC makeup back in August of 2022, which it has changed substantially, they wanted to increase the representation. Just of note, when we brought that back in December of 2022, the TPO board didn't even have consensus to maintain those additional 2 seats. So this has been a very much a moving target. So we're hoping we can build consensus around maintaining the current apportionment.
And it's a recommendation from us, so. Okay. Any other comments? Did I hear somebody online that was maybe about to make a comment? Okay. No further discussion, I guess, at this point, or questions, we will look for a motion. Can I get a motion to approve maintaining the current voting membership in the 2023 MPO apportionment plan and recommend approval to the TPO board?
Yeah, this is Jay Collins. I'll make a motion to approve maintaining the current voting membership in the 2023 MPO apportionment plan and recommend approval to the TPO board.
All right, thank you, Jay. Can I get a second?
Nicole Sutton, I'll second.
And Nicole.
Plan.
All right, we probably need to do a roll call vote on this.
Yes.
Okay, so can I get a roll call vote for all the in-person members?
Jeff Sims.
I don't believe I'm allowed to vote, so. All right. I think I can only vote if I pass the ballot.
You can only make a
You
motion.
just can't.
You can only make a motion.
If I can vote, then I'm in, yay. I'm in favor, yay.
Mike Williams.
Abstain?
Brian McCarthy.
Yes.
Jonathan Scott.
Yes.
Wade, I need guidance for Mr. Henry.
Yes, Alex, you probably have not got board approval yet. So maybe you shouldn't be voting.
Robert Frey. Laura Lenhart.
Yes.
Gina Du.
Yes.
Bob Campbell.
Abstain.
Jesus Peraza Garcia.
Yes.
Frank Kaufenauer. Jay Collins.
I am remote. This is Frank. I'm remote, but I would vote yes if I was there.
Okay. Jay Collins.
Yes.
Nicole Sutton.
Yes.
Sarah Caper.
Abstain.
The motion passes 8-0 with 3 abstentions.
Mike,
Right. Okay, great. Thanks to everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think with that, we're going to move on to the second action item, the 2050 Plan Needs Assessment for Equity.
Good afternoon. Let me pull up the presentation. And if I could get permission to share the screen, Gail. Elizabeth, could I get permission to share the screen? I think it's yours. Thank you. All right, Connor McDonald, TPO staff. I'm here to present the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Needs Assessment for Equity. So I'll start with a little background on the 2050 LRTP so you have an idea. First, there's a revenue forecast, which is an estimated value through 2050 of existing funding streams and potential local option revenue sources. And then there's several needs assessments, which include cost estimates, performance forecasts, and performance-based prioritization. So one being congestion management, and crash mitigation, another being good repair and resilience, real choices when not driving, major investments for economic growth, goods movement and truck routes. And finally here, we're on equity, which is safety treatments, good repair and real choices projects to address subpar infrastructure and public health in underperforming areas. So these needs assessments combined with the revenue forecast funneled to create various scenarios using revenue sources, known as cost feasible scenarios. These with the public input go to board consideration of a preferred scenario. So what is an equity needs assessment? We use this data and community input to identify existing barriers in the transportation system. Using that data, we synthesize performance measures to be included in the 2050 update. Then it provides a list of projects and goals to achieve through transportation planning, specifically focused on removing those barriers, and encompasses a methodology consistent with federal guidelines for funding. So the steps in a needs assessment for equity is first to identify the transportation disadvantaged target areas, then analyze those differences using geographic data and GIS modeling and task force input, and then finally generate project recommendations and costs to incorporate into the LRTP. So our first step, as mentioned, was to define transportation disadvantaged target areas. So we use the federally defined environmental justice areas combined with the TPO non-discrimination and equity plan of 2021. And with consultation with local governments and agencies, we created the 13 transportation disadvantaged target areas that you see on the map on the screen. So we wanted to put those target areas through different performance measures when being good repair and resiliency, so sidewalk and pavement condition, critical and vulnerable roadways, Vision Zero, the number of fatal and serious injury crashes, and signalized intersections as safe crossings, smart cities, the prevalence of particulate matter 2.5, and AADT, annual average daily traffic, and real choices, jobs and people served by transit, walking, the bicycle level of traffic stress, and levels of chronic disease. So this slide is a little bit tricky, but essentially the goal is to explain the deviation of the different target areas against the county average. So it's those differences, the deviation of those differences averaged together and then weighted for those deviations to create this chart that you see here. Meaning Sulphur Springs and University area would see the greatest deviation from the county average in this performance measures, followed by Bealsville, Town and Country, and Egypt Lake, Palm River, and Claremelle, all the way down to Penn City. So with that, we recommended projects to close critical infrastructure gaps in each TDTA. So that's roughly 1,300 miles, and you'll see that the miles are separated out here, so into bicycle lanes, assumed dump via resurfacing, resurfacing itself, sidewalk build, and tree canopy. And you'll see in the last column the total cost for each transportation disadvantaged target area. So you can see that although town where I believe it was Sulphur Springs and University Square had that greatest deviation, it may not be the highest cost. So it kind of lets us see what, so to speak, would be the lowest hanging fruit there to close those gaps. So these numbers are to show the amount of bicycle lanes that we need to meet that county average. There's also study recommendations. So corridor safety studies, granular and individual studies are needed to mitigate safety hazards along the roadway, particularly in the high injury network. Multimodal healthcare access, enhancing access to healthcare facilities through various transportation modes by integrating walking, biking, and public transit improvements in underserved areas, and trail studies, providing opportunity to assess existing and potential trail networks for expansion. And with that, the recommended action today is to approve the 2050 long-range transportation plan needs assessment for equity and forward approval to the TPO board. And I'll take any comments or questions. I also have some backup slides with more data if you'd like to see.
Okay. Thank you, Connor. Can you put up that map that showed the 13 colored areas?
Absolutely. And there's behind the legend, there's not a focus area, so it's not covered.
Okay. All right, do we have any, my own curiosity is the Bealsville, it just seems like an outlier when you look at, I know there's development heading that direction and you got 60, but outside of that, it's more rural than most every other part.
Right. And Bealsville, if I may comment on that, Bealsville it's an interesting history that's not known well or not commonly known. However, I think the history, if I'm correct, is that properties were sold to former those enslaved. So there's this history there that's progressed on into the modern day with those disparities there. So it's commonly unknown that is a historical disparity in that area.
Interesting. I know there are some phosphate, remnants and everything out there from former industry. I don't know if that plays into it, but I just, again, I was more of a question because most of the other areas in my mind, I know about what's going on there, but that one just seemed a little curious.
I wasn't familiar either, and I came upon this when I adopted this from my former staff.
Jay, go ahead.
So, thank you. So, Connor, a couple of these areas, such as Beesville, Dover, some of that for Waimama, some of that for Thonotosassa, are all in the rural service area. Is there a difference in the approach for the dollars then? Because you talked about sidewalks, bicycle, and some of the roadways out there are rural context roadways, and they usually don't come with some of these things that you're talking about.
Right. So the roadway network, we use the TPO's roadway network, so it doesn't include like the local small roads. So that may address the point, but we didn't. The average cost for a resurfacing was applied the same across, no matter if it's within the urban service area or without. But that's definitely a consideration that I would do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Sarah.
Thank you. Two questions for you, Connor. One is, did you look at, say, like normalizing this by area or anything like that? Like some of these geographic areas are quite larger than others, or especially if you only looked at functionally classified roads or something like that, you might have some that only have one roadway that passes through it. And then my second question is, did you have like a task force or a project team that advised on this? And if so, who was on that team?
Yes, absolutely. So the project team, we had several task force meetings, and those were, a lot of the members were representatives of CRAs and community development corporations.
Okay.
And the first question, I can try to go to one of the slides that's hidden, so I have an example for you. Let's see. I want to kind of find a good example. No. So you're absolutely right in that some of the target areas are larger than the others. So I wanted to, when we were going back with the consultant, I wanted to make sure that we analyze that in the right way. So like, for example, the percentage of pavement condition, I wanted to say it wasn't, initially we were scoring like the greatest number of failing PCI. But we did go back and see the percentage of failing PCI compared to the overall pavement on the network in that area. So it is relative to that size.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just have one question about the recommendation slide that you had. I know for Temple Terrace, we have a very small section of that Sulphur Springs University Square, and we're starting to resurface and do some of the sidewalk work in that area. From these recommendations, how is the TPO going to track these types of improvements to see if we're on our way to meeting, I guess, the goal?
Right, that's an excellent question. And the actual projects themselves will feed into the other needs assessments. So for example, if it's a safety project, it'll feed into the safety needs assessment as well. So that hopefully, in addition, if we see that need for safety treatment or safety treatment, it would also be identified in another needs assessment as well. So as far as tracking though, we haven't come up with a method, and that's certainly something that I would want to track to going forward, tracking how we are meeting those goals.
All right, thank you. Do we have any more comments or questions?
I have a question.
Mike.
Connor, so are the projects that you identified along the cost estimates and all, are these new projects, or are they projects that were had already been identified that this would just sort of help make them a higher priority? Or I don't quite understand that part of it.
Right. So what we've done is we've taken like the amount of bicycle lanes needed we evaluated current projects and then what's still needed on top, like current projects that are programmed to be funded. And then we've taken what's still needed on top of that to meet the county average. So it would be 6 miles of resurfacing in Bealsville to meet a county average of the average PCI.
Right, so these are additional projects that will be needed to close the gap for these areas to reach the average for the county.
Correct.
And so in this, there's actually no new projects, no new dollars. It's just simply saying, if dollars were available, you can funnel them here and it would close a gap.
Right.
And sorry for speaking out of turn.
Thank you. Thank you. Helps me understand better.
It's a committee, so it's a communal effort. So if you can provide, sound input, which you typically do, I appreciate it.
Yeah, see.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, with that, we are looking for a motion to approve the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Needs Assessment for equity and forward for approval to the TPO board. Can I get a motion?
Also move.
Thank you, Bob. Can I get a second?
Jay Hall.
Second, Brian McCarthy.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Ty.
Thank you.
All right, up next is the last item, urban area boundaries and functional classification.
Welcome, everybody, and this is great timing, Wade Reynolds, TPO staff, because we did just get Friday afternoon the even more updated map from the one I had originally had in this presentation. So that's great. So Wade Reynolds, TPO staff. So the 2010 urban area boundary was actually a little bit larger than what is being proposed and looked at this year. Where you can particularly see that is down along the Manatee County line and around Plant City in particular, as well as along the Pasco Hillsborough line, which you'll be able to see in the upcoming maps. So 2020, the proposed, and this is before smoothing, you can see anything in any of the blue you see is an area that has been removed. And that is partly because some of those are wetland areas, coastal wetlands, et cetera. You can also see the conservation area north of University of South Florida. The light red portions there are the ones that have been added, which we'll see. So anything in blue that you see that's blue here is removed. Anything that you see in that pinkish orange color has been added. So this was the sort of working map that we went through, went up to FDOT or to District 7 headquarters. And all those green lines that you can see on there were additions for the most part. And the next slide shows the refined version of this. Those were to be consistent. You could see that they had left out in a subdivision, sort of an additional street that went around the edge of it. And so we added those back in. Part of the reason for the changes is because they changed the definition of what counts as an urbanized area. And it just, that formula changes what you get a little bit. So this is what we have just received as sort of the main map to be moving forward. I already have a couple of comments on it. But if you all are able to see the cursor here, we talked about industrial areas and whether they should be included. They should be under the guidance from the federal government and from FDOT. So that would add back in Mosaic's operation and the port facility here on the other side of McKay Bay from downtown. But those are just two additions that I have noted already. You can see that down towards Manatee County, we also no longer touch there and it's a little more consistent with the urbanized area boundary. And just for a couple of statistics on that, the land area is up 1%, the population is up 14% in the overall urbanized area. This is just to show you what the final, and this is when functional classification comes in. The urbanized area boundary will be the line between urban and rural, arterials, collectors, et cetera. That will change a little bit, but as I said, we only have overall a 1% land area change. So the urban and rural part of that won't be changing that much. We have received, of course, the maps and changes already from the city of Tampa and from Hillsborough County, and those have been transmitted to FDOT for inclusion in this map, which will ultimately be approved by the TPO, FDOT, FHWA, and I believe the governor actually has to sign off as well, and we have to sign off with the other counties in the urbanized area. So the 22-23 schedule, of course, those boundaries were released December 29th of last year. The D7 team is responsible for adjusting those, and it's a 12-month process for coordinating the urban boundaries, which means we have to have this urbanized area boundary more or less complete by the end of the year. And that means we follow that up all next year, really digging into the functional classification process, and that will be approved by the end of next year is the proposed schedule. So the TPO rule, approval of the federal functional classification along with DOT and FHWA, helping to align the local ones, as I just mentioned, and coordinating this between jurisdictions. So as I said, it'll be coming back to the TAC and board in 2024, and we will be having a workshop in December with Ian Lockwood, who is a nationally recognized engineer, and he'll be talking to us about mostly arterial roadways. So that's all I have for you today. If there are any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them.
All right, thanks, Wade. Yes, Dave.
Thank you. So Wade, it looked like some areas in South County were removed. Are those areas within the urban service boundary for land use though?
Some areas that are within the county's urban service area are still considered rural under this because they have not been developed to the level that would make them urban under federal guidelines.
Okay. Thank you.
But they could develop at urban densities once developed, and then 10 years from now, they would be coming in.
Sure.
If I could ask a more basic question, could you just kind of better explain for my benefit, maybe to you guys here, what exactly the significance of being designated an urban service area is?
Well, so I guess the urban area boundary is separate from the urban service area. So the urban area boundary is the classification just for roadways for the functionally classified roadways to be determined to be rural or urban is the main distinction that you'll see between those. The urban service area, on the other hand, is where water, sewer, and other utilities could be extended. So that's a good distinction to make between the urban service area and the urban area boundary. That the urban service area refers to things other than just transportation.
And greater densities generally too.
Yes, sir.
But that affects like development or funding, I mean, like, what is, I guess I'm trying to say, what is it, the benefit or?
Urban service area is really, it is public utilities like water, sewer, et cetera. But the density you can get 4 or 6 units per acre or even more in some areas. Where in the rural service area, generally, I mean, there's all sorts of exceptions, but it's one house per
Right.
5 acres. So it's
From the transportation side.
It's like apples and oranges, I think is really what.
But that's why
Right.
That's why I brought it up, is because in the urban service boundary, we expect suburban style development or more intense. And if you have roadways in areas that are federally designated for rural roadways, yet the county has put a suburban land use on them, there may be an inconsistency between the two when they develop. However, as Wade said, these things can change through time. It's just, we all know that once the road is built, the road doesn't get changed in our lifetime.
Not for a long time. You're right about that. And I agree that, it might be more beneficial to consider some future land uses or locked in developments. Basically, in my discussions with FDOT, unless dirt has been moved on site, or unless they have building permits in hand, more or less, they are not going to count that as part of the urbanized area.
Yeah. And then the other part that I find very interesting in this also is Plant City, because Plant City, of course, has designs on going well north of Knights Griffin through annexation and putting suburban style development up there. But this doesn't move past Knights Griffin.
Right, and you can see that large amounts of blue north of I-4, which is the area that in Plant City is being removed from the urban area boundary.
Do you overlay like the urban service area and the urban boundary being established here to just kind of compare? I say it's because, like I know our board members and thus the TPO have taken positions before that they don't want road dollars spent outside the urban service area, like State 60 is the example I think of. The DOT had a program to go all the way out to the Polk County line, and the TPO board said, no, I don't want it to go out there. Because they don't want to put pressure on the urban service area. I know it's a little bit apples and oranges, but there is some relationship there.
You have a good point, and I think overlaying with this map the urban service areas of the cities and the county would be a useful thing for the discussion. So I will make sure I do that next time. I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, just like, we've been dealing with that with, around the whole area around Tampa Exec, of the
Yes.
Tampa Executive Airport is not part of the urban service boundary, but there's been a lot of pressure to do that because of the speedway, and there is all those inconsistencies of, once again, that growth, but then there's this like restriction around us. And so it's been something that we've been struggling with for as long as I've been at the airport on getting the road fixed. But that's also been this then pressure from outside forces on us saying to fix the water and because we're, like the different pieces because of the urban service boundary. So it's all kind of, it is getting like kind of that overlay in different places of the county that are directly related to what you're saying, Mike, of like that.
And to put it one step further with another layer on it, I believe you're taking some of Waimama out of it. And of course, Connor just told us that Waimama needs additional dollars because it's one of your 13 spots. And I would assume that this would take money away from Waimama in the sense that it would remove for consideration certain types of roadway facilities. You see where you have Sun City Center directly to the east of Sun City Center, that blue, I believe you're saying is to remove.
Yes, those blue areas are to be removed, but you have a good point, and this was the initial one. We did add some back in the Waimama area that's that are undergoing a little more development. It's hard to see here, but you can actually see on this one that they just provided what is being added back in. And there were some re-additions in the Waimama area, but it
just shows the complexity of everything y'all do and all of the different competing voices in the room.
Sure. Thanks.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, good.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Wade. So that concludes all the scheduled items. Do we have any old or new business that anyone wishes to bring up? All right, very good. So with that, I don't believe there's any further action, and we will conclude the meeting. Thank you. Yeah, that's.